Hello and welcome back to Family History with Chris. I am Chris, and today I wanted to introduce you to one of my fourth great grandmothers. This is Juliann Fredrikke Hansen. Uh, I just wanted to learn more about her. Didn't know much about her. What I'm going to be doing is a two-part series or two parts on her because I recorded this one earlier and I found out I didn't have the sound, so I didn't think y'all wanted to watch me and with no sound. So maybe I need to learn how to record over, do something like that. Um, anyway, uh, this is her house that she lived in when she lived in Denmark. However, she did not live in it back in 1965. That was after her time. This is her family, uh, as you can see, and maybe I can find that's my great grandfather right there. Nice young looking kid. Um, and that's well, let's see, what is it? No, not my great. Yeah, it is. So that means she's my great great grandmother, great great grandfather. Yep, good deal. Okay, moving on. She's out. Her headstone's out in Teton County. Uh, oh, in Sugar City. I'm sorry, Sugar City, Idaho. So a bunch of here's her obituary. I haven't read that yet, but I wanted to get into this one. This is the one I was reading by John M. Ricks. I appreciate this memory. Uh, and what I found interesting was that this first part she had written. So, uh, kind of like an autobiography. The second part, I read what Dora had written, and it's all interesting. Uh, I also like it because it shows. Okay, so she traveled by train, coming across. Uh, not from Denmark. I'm sorry. Uh, she started out in Denmark. Uh, her family got uh, introduced to the church and wanted to follow along. This is back in 1880. I think she ended up in Idaho, up there in Rexburg area. Um, let's just read it. I, I think she can tell it better herself. I, Juliann Frederikke Hansen Ricks, having been born of goodly parents who suffered much for the gospel's sake, will try to write a sketch of my life. I was born in Trelos, Præstø, Denmark, June 12, 1871. I was christened in the Lutheran church when a small baby in Skilby, I can't say these words, Skilby Kirke Church. I attended school in Skilby until I was 11 years old. We came to Utah and settled in Harrisville. We joined the church in the year of 1880. After we joined the church, our friends, relatives would have nothing more to do with us. We lived on a very pretty little farm and had a good, comfortable home. But as soon as we could, we sold it and immigrated to Utah. There were 5 children and our parents. 2 brothers and 1 sister had come over before, but we all met at Ogden. We had a very good voyage, except seasickness. That is a terrible sickness. We came over the North Sea from Copenhagen to England on a very poor old ship. It took 3 days on sea and 1 day to come through England. Then we boarded a steamboat across the Atlantic. It was run by steam and had a big wheel on the side that helped to paddle it. It was much better than the one we had crossed in the north, the north end. It was much larger and run much better, but when it was stormy and the sea was rough, it would throw the water into our beds. Of course, we were down in the bottom. We were storage passengers. That was the way all poor saints rode in those days. So apparently she was a poor saint. We were in the ocean 2 weeks altogether. There was one birth and one death on the voyage. We were 2 weeks on the train from New York to Ogden. 2 weeks, New York to Ogden. That's faster than the Pioneers, though. I can tell you that. The immigration train would have to stop and let all the other trains pass. Why? That is why it took so long. Sometimes we would have to stop and change cars at night, and the children would all be asleep. It was sure hard for father and mother when we arrived at Ogden. Some friends and parents used to know. Uh, some friends my parents used to know uh, in the old country came to meet us. They took me home with them. I sure had a very hard school there. My folks would come and visit me, but I dared not tell them how mean the lady was to me because I was afraid I would have to stay. Here she is, what, 11 or something like that, coming over by after her parents and on a train by herself. And then she was staying at a place where she was getting schooling in Ogden, but the lady was mean that she lived with. Would you do that to your kids? It was hard for my father to make a living, especially that first winter. It took almost all we had to bring us over here. He only had $60 when we landed in Ogden, and winter was coming on. He did what he could. He took care of Levi Taylor's farm in Harrisville while Elder Taylor was on a mission. Then he came up to the Snake River country in 1884 and settled in Salem and helped build the canals and ditches. It was a sagebrush plain. Okay, my question is there still sagebrush up there? I think there is up in Salem, but I don't know if there's a whole lot. My mother would take her dry bread and go down to the river and do the family washing. I did not come up here with my parents. When they came up here, I was staying with Hiram H. Maybe it's Hiram H. Goodard's wife in Ogden. I loved her very much. She was very kind to me. I came the next year. My folks were to meet me at Eagle Rock, Idaho Falls. I hadn't arrived the day I was to leave Ogden. The lady I stayed with was taken ill. Okay, hold on. I wanted to talk about Eagle Rock. So, uh, Eagle Rock was the name of Idaho Falls before it became Idaho Falls. And back in those days, it was a point where you could cross the canyon or cross the river um, to head out west. Uh, and right there in Idaho Falls, there's a place called Taylor's Crossing, and that's where it was. When people had come up to that area, there was a rock in the middle of the water with a big eagle's nest. Now, Idaho Falls does pay tribute to this. They built a circle out in Taylor's Crossing area with some waterfalls and stuff like that, and that's what they're doing to pay tribute to Eagle Rock. But anyway, it's Idaho Falls. Um, Moving on. I stayed 2 weeks longer until she was better. Then there was no one to meet me in Idaho Falls. My brother was working on the railroad at Idaho Falls. He told me about all I could do was to get a job and go to work. I was just 13 years old. So can you imagine being 13 years old and having to go get a job? This was definitely before those laws permitting children to work. I don't know. Don't know. Anyway, but I got a job in the Old Brooks Hotel to wait on tables for $15 a month. Now, Old Brooks Motel, if anybody knows where that is, I'd like to know. I don't think it was the Bonneville Hotel. Bonneville Hotel is actually still there in Idaho Falls. Uh, but Old Brooks, I don't know. I worked a few months for that and did as much as the other older girls, and they were getting paid $20 a month or $20 a month. I asked the boss why I couldn't have as much as I did, as much when I did the same work. He said, "It doesn't cost as much for your short dresses as it does for the girls' long ones." I said, "All right, give me as much as you do them, and I will wear the long dresses." He gave me $20 and I wore the long dresses. When I was 15, I went home to Salem and stayed all winter. My father and mother and two sisters had typhoid fever. I nursed them through, but mother took pneumonia and died on February 10th, 1886. Besides taking care of the sick, I helped my 11-year-old brother tend a herd of cattle. Snow was over the fences, and we had to drive the stock to the river for water. The next spring, I went to Camas to work. That fall, I went back to Ogden and stayed with Mrs. Goddard all winter. The next spring, I went back to Camas to work for Mrs. Hank Stewart all summer. Okay, I was just thinking about Salem. Salem, Idaho. I do believe. Uh, okay, so in Idaho, there's the Snake River Valley, and there's a couple mountain ranges where Salem is up between two of those mountain ranges up there. That is Sagebrush County country. So yeah, this is making sense. Let's see. In the fall, I came home and went to school at Rick's Academy the year of 1888. I enjoyed myself there very much. The boys and girls were like one grand family. Rick's Academy, that was what it was before it became Rick's College and before it became BYU Idaho. So, established, I don't remember when it was established. It could have been I know in the 1800s, 1880s. I think it was 1888 that they were established, but let me get my history right. Boys and girls were like one grand family. It was always my wish that my children should go there. Up till now, the year 1930, I have had 7 sons and one daughter there from 2 to 4 years. That winter, the year 1888, I met John Ricks. This is Thomas C. Ricks's son. He was working in the blacksmith shop. I went with him to a few dances that winter. We had our academy dances. We danced quadrilles, French four, and all those we used to call square dances. So they still do dances there at BYU Idaho. I used to go there before I went to college. Back when I was single, I would I would go up there and try to learn some dances like the Latin dances, or there were country dances and stuff like that. So dances have changed, but they're still doing dances. It's kind of fun. My sister, Corrine Marie, was attending school her first year at Rick's, and also my youngest brother, Hans or Harry. We all stayed with Mother Troop. My brother furnished the flour, meat, and potatoes. We girls paid $2.50 per week each and did all the work in washing and ironing. In the spring, when school was out, my sister and I went to Camas and worked a short time. When we went to Island Park at a station where people that were going to the park would stop overnight, it was midway Beaver Canyon. West Yellowstone was over 50 miles from either place. That was a pretty good day's drive for horses. Sometimes they would have 5 or 6 horses on a big coach, or 2 or 4 horses on an ordinary white top buggy that would carry from 4 to 6 passengers. The tours would come up to Beaver Canyon on the train. That was the nearest train to the park in those days. The next fall, when the park closed, I went to Dillon, Montana, and worked at a home of Governor White. My wife treated me like a sister. Or, I'm sorry, his wife treated me like a sister. They had 15 rooms to keep clean. I did all those besides the washing and ironing. There were 6 in the family. I worked hard, but I enjoyed it. I also did the cooking. I worked there about 2 or 3 months, and President Thomas E. Ricks sent for me to come home and work in his store. He had controlling interest in the old co-op store in Rexburg. Weller Johnson's father was the manager. I worked there until the fall of 1890, when I married John Ricks. We were married in the Logan Temple, September 10th, 1890. 1890, that was when Idaho became a state. While in Utah, we went down to North Ogden on a visit to my husband's grandmother, Shaw, and I also visited Uncle Ed Shaw, Samuel Shaw, and Aunt Sarah Alvoyd. That was my husband's mother's only full sister. They all treated us well. They all had big fruit orchards, and they gave us lots of fruit to bring home. We returned to Rexburg very happy. My husband continued to work in the blacksmith shop, but the work did not agree with him. There was too much smoke. Whenever they weren't very busy, he would get out for a while and go to the timbers and haul some firewood. It was late in the fall and cold and stormy. He came home chilled through, and he kept taking chills. I asked him if I should go get Brother Mardick and Brother Spory to administer to him. He said he would like it, but it was too dark for me to go after them. I said, "No, it isn't." But it was so dark you could not see your hand before you. I started after Brother Mardick. He lived just about a block from us. As soon as I started on my way, the path was lit up, just a narrow light path with a black wall on each side. Brother Mardick went after Brother Spory, and they administered to my husband. The chills quit, and he got up and ate his supper. We sang a few songs, had prayer, and retired. We used to always sing before we went to bed. There was no picture shows in those days, and I guess if there had of been, we couldn't have afforded it. The money was very scarce in those days, but we were happy anyway. Lesson learned, it doesn't take money to be happy. I was made secretary of the Stake Mutual in November 1890. I would attend conference in the different wards with President Ricks. Our stake was then from Teton Basin on the east to Pocatello on the south, and Montana on the north, and Salem on the west. That is huge. Okay, so I guess, the church is very young in 1890. Um, and you're going from Montana to what? Uh, Wyoming to Salem, which is like the whole, uh, over to the other mountain range, and Pocatello down south. So when I moved up to Idaho Falls, we had gotten into a ward that was a mile block. Okay. And it was just it was just barely a new ward. Now, since then, this was back in the 1990s, so 100 years later, you had a mile block with one ward. And since then, it has split and split and split, split. So there's now in that 1 mile block, there are 3 churches, and I knew of 6 wards that were there. But I have heard, because they reduced the size of the wards, that each one of those has split. So I think you have like 12 wards in 1 mile block. Very different than 1890. A terrible scourge of diphtheria went through the country in the winter and spring of 1890 and 91. Some families lost every child they had. My husband's youngest sister, Eleanor, died with it. Orson and May had it very bad. I helped take care of them. I had a touch of it myself, but I did not give up. This was in April, and my first baby was born June 11th, 1891. She was a beautiful little girl. She lived to be 5 years and 3 months. She died of diphtheria. My youngest brother had been up to Montana and contracted the disease and brought it home to us. Okay, so, even then, technology and health has come such a long way. I mean, like here, you were lucky to keep your kids. Can you imagine even having to worry about that? Oh, that's just glad I lived when I do. I got a little ahead of my story, so I will start where I left off. We lived in Rexburg until the year 1893. Then we moved out to Salem the 2nd of February to run my father's farm. The snow was almost gone when we moved out, but in March we got more snow than we had all winter. It was good sleighing in April. We struggled along on the farm and did the best we could. My husband fixed up a little blacksmith shop and would sharpen a few plow points and harrow teeth for the neighbors. For this, we would get a few potatoes or some grain or anything people could spare. On September 16th, 1893, our first boy was born. We farmed my father's farm 2 years. Then we bought a 60-acre farm in Salem and lived in one place where six other sons were born from 1895 until 1906, January 1906. Then we moved to our ranch midway between Teton and Sugar City. There two girls and one son were born. Here we raised our family, 7 boys and 1 girl, have attended Rick's from 2 to 4 years, and 3 sons filled missions. My husband died in the year 1920. At this date, 1931, I have 7 sons, all married in the temple. And the next part I will pick up on the next episode. But this was written by her, and I hope you learned something. And thank you for watching. If you're even here at the end, if you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like to add, any memories, if this had sparked any of your memories, uh, it, feel free to share. But if it's too sacred, don't share. Uh, and I get that from Christian Homestead. He does a good job. So anyway, that is my great, great, great grandmother. Well, let's find out here. Hold on. Uh, let's see what they call her. Because I know, yeah, view relationship, right? She is my second great grandmother. That's right. On my mom's side, my grandma was a Ricks, and yeah, there we go. All right. With that, I will leave you, and we will catch you next time. Bye.